Hi quilters, it's Pam from AccuQuilt. You know, we have so many squares available to quilters. What a great way to use up your scraps, and you can make a variety of patterns and quilts and table runners with those squares. So we've added to our collection of squares. Let me introduce you to the 1.5 inch squares. So these are great little squares. They finish to 1 inch because we've added that 1/4 inch seam allowance. So you can see that there are 9 on the die board. Our two-tone foam is going to show you where to lay that fabric to cut all of those squares. So this is a great way to use up your stash or your scraps. It's also, look at this, charm pack friendly. So you can go to your stash, grab your charm packs, and start really using up your scraps. So we're going to use this die today, the 1.5 inch squares, and we're going to use this great pattern called Trip Around the World. Trip Around the World is a classic quilt pattern. Today we're going to show you how to make a pillow with it. So this is the pillow we're going to make. We'd like to thank our friends at Island Boutique for these great boutiques that we're going to use in our project today. So we're going to cut a multiple of these tiny little 1.5 inch squares. We're also going to cut 2.5 inch squares, which we're going to use our die number 2 from our 8 inch cube. So quilters, here's kind of a sample of a 16 patch that we used. So you can maybe think about different sizes of squares that you want to use in that 16 patch. So for sure you could use these 1.5 inch squares. Also, if you love postage stamp quilts, this is the die for that. So quilters, think about how difficult it is to cut squares. You got to make sure your strips are perfect, turn them 90 degrees, make sure they're perfect. So this is a real fast and easy way to cut multiple 1.5 inch squares. In fact, with 6 layers of fabric, you want to make sure you can cut 54 squares in one pass. So we want to make sure that as we're cutting these, the lengthwise grain of the fabric is going to travel back and forth across the die board. So like I said, you could use your charm packs or your scraps. We're actually going to use a strip of fabric. So what I did was I measured the width at the widest point on the die, and then I added a 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch on either side, and then I just rough cut a strip. So it's a great way to use your strips when you're cutting squares. Also, I'm going to make sure, since we have the salvage edge, we're going to have that salvage edge away from us. This is the lengthwise grain. So I'm going to just cover my shapes. So think about how fast this is going to be. 90% faster than with rotary cutters or scissors. So I'm going to take my die. I put the cutting mat on top. I'm going to run it through our Go fabric cutter. Now quilters, you could use our Go fabric cutter, our Go Baby, or even our Go Big Electric. Give it a little love, slide that mat off. If you lift the mat, all the pieces fly everywhere, okay? We're going to peel back. Look at this. Ta-da! Now we've cut all of those squares in one pass. So to make Trip Around the World, we also want to cut some 2.5 inch squares. So I'm going to leave these right here on the die board. I'm going to take my 2.5 inch squares, which is die number 2 from the 8 inch cube, which is part of our Ready, Set, Go system. Again, we can cut up to 6 layers of cotton fabric in one pass. We want to have that lengthwise grain go through across the die board. Label's going to be at your belly. Put my cutting mat on top. This is the only way to ever cut squares. All right. We're going to give it some love. Slide that mat off. Remember, don't lift. And we're going to peel back. And ta-da, we've cut perfect squares. So look how fast and how easy it was to cut those squares. Now, I have already put together and cut some of our pieces that we're going to need for our Trip Around the World pillow. So you can see I've already cut some pieces from the other colors of batiks. I've also cut some bigger squares. So we're going to make this unit here, and I'm just going to show you how simple and easy it is to sew together. So what I want to do is I want to take a black piece and a white piece. Look at those little squares. And we're gonna take a black piece and our green batik. I love using batiks. That's kind of my new fun thing to do. All right, so I'm gonna take and put these pieces together. Now I'm gonna start with a little piece of jumper fabric so that I don't bury my needle as I'm sewing this 1/4 inch seam. All right. So this little piece of jumper fabric allows it so that I don't bury my needle. Now I'm just gonna come right along through here. Look how fast and easy this is. So quilters, I would tell you to cut all your pieces first and then sew them together in that chain stitch, okay? All right. Now that I've chain pieced these together, I'm just gonna cut them apart with my little scissors, okay? Now you wanna make sure you follow the instructions, especially when it comes to pressing. So what it's gonna tell you in the pressing is that when the green and the black, you wanna press to the black. So now I've pressed the green and the black unit and I've pressed towards the black. So I'm gonna take my white unit and I'm gonna press towards the black. All right. Now I have these 2 units that are gonna go together. And since I pressed in opposite directions, it's gonna lay together perfectly flat, just like this. So with AccuQuilt, every single time you're gonna have those clean and accurate cuts. So you don't have to fudge that 1/4 inch seam allowance, or you don't have to fudge how you wanna trim them out, okay? They're gonna fit together perfectly. All right, so I'm gonna take my little piece of jumper fabric. I'm gonna start here. I'm gonna do a perfect 1/4 inch seam. Okay. All right, so now we've sewn these pieces together, and look how perfect they sewed together because we cut the pieces perfectly. So here's a little tip on how to swirl your fabric. What you wanna do is come right here to this center seam, and you just wanna pick out these 2 little stitches that are holding that center together. Okay? And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna open it up. Now you have to be real careful here so you don't take out all the stitching. And then you're gonna press in the center and swirl those seams open. Then I'm gonna take my iron and press it. Okay? So we just took the center stitches out, and then we can just take our little finger and push it straight down, and that will let the center come down just like that. See, wasn't that easy to do? Just be careful that you don't continue to take out more than 2 stitches there. All right, then we're gonna put it here with our other unit. We're gonna sew them together and continue to make our blocks for trip around the world. So quilters, wasn't that fast and easy to do? So just a reminder, you're gonna make those same units and blocks just in different colors to make our trip around the world pattern. Don't forget that you can purchase our new 1.5 inch squares at your local signature dealer or at AccuQuilt.com. Also, remember, we'd love to see your finished projects. You can upload those to AccuQuilt.com and share them with other quilters. Remember to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest. And remember, at AccuQuilt, we help you cut time so you can quilt more.